Okay, I want to talk to you about an idea that's really influenced me and I think is really clever. So this is from a book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Great book, I highly recommend it to you. So you're probably familiar with the idea of lean. That's the Toyota 7 Waste. Toyota, really clever. And that whole lean thinking is all about just don't do the stuff that doesn't add value. So eliminate non-value adding activities. So what does that mean in terms of startups? Well, if we think of the sort of, if you like, the old-fashioned model of startups, we come up with some idea, we convince some venture capitalist to give us, say, $3 million, and if we're a software company, we go and build some, what we think is some groovy piece of software. So we spend $2 million building this product. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, no one might care. We might not actually get any customers. We've wasted all that money. So this idea about lean startup is how do we really use the money really carefully and not waste anything. All right, so that's the sort of basic idea. So we start with an idea. The first thing we want to do is to build something. But rather than spend our $2 million and build out the sort of our dream of what we think the customer wants, the idea under Lean Startup is that we build the minimum viable product. So what we're aiming to do is say, imagine if we only had one customer. What could we do that would really test our proposition so that we could learn from it, but is not necessarily the full thing. And what we know is, of course, is that the innovators on our cycle of adoption, they're more prepared to put up with maybe things not being perfect. And Eric Ries in his book tells the story of, they spent all this money to build this great product and all these systems to scale it, but they only had 3 customers. They knew these guys by name. They didn't need massive systems to engage with them. So what we want is a minimum viable product. Now that needs a lot of thinking. So a great example is Dropbox. So when they were designing the minimum viable product, rather than spend money on software, what they did is create an animated video. So they did a video of what the software would look like. They didn't actually build the software. That gave them a great opportunity to test that proposition with clients. So you can do this stuff with paper. You can do it, I think of it almost a Flintstones production. So it looks sort of okay from the customer, but behind the scenes it's being done manually. Of course, if it works, then you can automate, then you can spend the money on the software. So the idea is for a minimum amount of money, you are testing it with real paying customers. So we build it. Then we want to really measure what's happening. How do the customers use it? If we get, how do we get more customers? What are they prepared to pay? And we measure that against our original plan. So that we can test our propositions and know whether, were we kidding ourselves or are we on track? It's also important to design A/B testing into everything. So I used to think that I could make a judgment as to what a customer wanted. I know I made so many mistakes, I now no longer believe it. So the only thing that matters is the customer's viewpoint, the customer's perspective. And really the best way to do that is by A/B testing. So we don't presume anything. Let's say in case of pricing, we'll have a sort of structured test so that some customers see price A, some customers see price B, and we really test the impact. We don't guess, we test it. Because the key thing we want to do is learn. We don't presume, we don't go and spend millions of dollars, we learn from experience with real customers. And we're going to use tools to figure out, what's working, what's not working. If something's not working, we use the 5 whys. We're also very conscious of what is waste. Is the money that we're spending, the effort that we're putting in really adding value to the customer? So we want to eliminate waste and keep redesigning, because what we want to do is to keep that cycle going. And importantly, we have to make a decision: do we keep going, or do we pivot? So it might be that our original idea isn't going to work, but by doing this, we actually engage with the customer and we get some clues from a customer about that we should take the business in a different direction. So this is a really important point. Sometimes it makes sense to keep going. Sometimes it makes sense, because of what you learnt from the customer, to go in a completely different direction. And there are lots of examples of businesses that are quite different from the original idea. You know, one example I had of a fellow that wanted to originally have a car cleaning business, custom cleaning business, that eventually ended up to be a full service shipping marina business. It's a long story how that happened, but the real business was quite different from the original proposition. So there you have it, The Lean Startup, Applying Lean Thinking to Startups. It's a great book, highly recommend it, and it's caused me to change my thinking about how startups can be de-risked. But this idea also works for corporates. So corporates can experiment with new products and services using this minimum viable product methodology to, again, innovate at low risk.